Polk is Senator from Mississippi District 44, Lamar, Pearl, and River, Chairman of Accountability, Efficiency, Transparency, Vice Chair, Senate Appropriations. John, I just thought we should have had a roundtable here and done this, or else you could have had a meeting in the green room.
Well, I can't believe
right
you had me following the chairman because he knows so much about so many things.
Well, I give the brain trust here, and I hate to go over on the same day because it's kind of unusual, the same type of topics, but there are these are the main ones we're going to be dealing with in the 23 session. So welcome, first of all. I'm still blown away by the fact that we actually have 79 people over 100 years old.
That was a statistic that kind of shocked me also.
Yes.
And you get to thinking about that. Look at the group that was employed back then. It was a small portion of the percent of Mississippi.
True.
So I'm wondering if we have that many people over 100 percentage-wise in Mississippi.
Well, it also proves that they all probably are fans of Polk sausage, and that's good long living. So we got to rethink Mississippi's health on that one.
Absolutely.
But the medium age 108 is what he said. So I just find that absolutely amazing. But when you start looking at revenue and you start looking at what was it, almost $425 million over a previous year collections, and you go back and you look at the 10-year growth. There is a lot of validity when somebody says, look, we're taking more than we need to run state government. We can either leave it there or grow state government or we can give some of it back to the people. Would you agree that there is some validity in that?
Yes. Now, how we give it back to the people may be the concern. I am for very carefully making sure that we get it back to the people. And my idea this year, along with the Lieutenant Governor, is let's do a rebate. Senator Hobson has.
How do you base that rebate? Because, I mean, it's going to be based on the total amount of the rebate is going to be based on the income.
Well, in my mind, it would be on the amount of taxes you paid.
Right.
Percent of the tax you paid, get it back.
Low end to high end would be what? Do you have any idea?
Well, we're looking at $270 million, and low end would be whatever the percent of tax. If you paid $100, whatever that percent is of the total, then you would get that percent back, maybe $5 or $6 in my mind.
Yeah.
Now, some people want to have a minimum, but I'm more for just straight across the board percent.
When you do that, is it going to benefit the ones who need it the most? Because the larger amount's going to be on the higher incomes. We understand that mathematic, right?
Well, are we giving? But is our objective to make equality of tax money, or
Good
is
point.
it more of let's give back
Fairness.
what you gave, the fairness of what you put in?
No, I agree with that. That's a fair point. But the other part of that, killing two birds with one stone, why wouldn't we look at a possibility of the grocery tax? I just think if we could do the grocery tax, it's going to benefit a lot of people. That's going to, and I understand that would be a recurring thing, but even a decrease in the amount of taxes on groceries.
Oh, Paul, I've been a proponent of reducing grocery tax and trying to eliminate it for years. So if we could get some momentum going there, I would be all for that instead of a rebate.
Well, is there anybody in the state legislature, the House or the Senate, kind of behind that? Because, number one, I've asked questions on this. The stumbling block is how do you make the municipalities whole? And I've been told by a couple of people who should know this, and they did answer it, that there is a way to do that.
Mm-hmm. I'm sure there is. I have not looked at the way to do it. But, yes, that is sometimes the income of a city is pretty much grocery tax. That's all they have left in some of these smaller towns are the grocery stores. So that is a problem. But that would affect more people, more Mississippians every day than anything I can think of.
Well, if that does not happen, and this is an election year, could you see that the governor called in a special, especially if it fails in the Senate, could you see the governor calling a special session to force that that decision on the House and Senate in a special session?
I would never project what the governor may do. He certainly could. That would be his prerogative. But actually, if I were governor, I would not. If we can't handle it in the regular session, let's just wait till next year. We'll have a new legislature, new members, I'm sure. So let's see what happens then.
What do you see? Oh, here's a question I didn't get a chance to ask John here, because one of the other big things is going to be the validation or the legality, making the strips, the fentanyl strips. And I know that's a big bill that's passing through. Have you had a chance to look at that?
I have not. I've not seen the bill yet.
Yeah. What do you think about it? Because there's also there's some wipes that are coming out, new technology. Mm-hmm. So now there's more than one way to actually detect fentanyl in the open market there. Mm-hmm.
You know, it's one of those things that's on this hand and then on the other hand. I can see good points of both. I can see the bad points of both. Yeah. I don't want to encourage people to use it. And that's one of the biggest arguments I hear against using the strips, is putting them out there, is that it would probably increase the use. I don't know that I buy that. And I certainly would think that if someone's going to use drugs, let's make it as safe as possible. Unfortunately, that is the day we're in.
There was a story you've probably heard about Narcan that's used to reverse opioid overdoses, but one proposal aims to potentially stop users in their tracks by learning more about what they're taking before it reaches that point. Fentanyl certainly circulating in the Magnolia State. Last week we had Tupelo police found, I think it was the week before last, 10,000 pills. This was in that barber shop. As overdose deaths keep climbing in Mississippi, as lawmakers try to attack the problem from different angles. So we'll see where that one goes. When you look at the other big issues out there, is making hospitals whole. From your perspective, and again, you're also not only on appropriations, but accountability, efficiency, and transparency. From your perspective, John Polk, Senator, Mississippi District 44. John, what's your take on this?
Well, first off, one of the big things everybody talks about is expanding Medicaid. That will not solve the problem. I'm not sure what the intrinsic problem of hospitals is or are, but we have got to find the underlying cause first. And do we have too many hospitals in Mississippi? Do we need more standalone emergency facilities in some of our communities? The other thing that you have to look at is something that we've kind of gotten in trouble with our mental health facilities, and that is all the hospitals, except for University of Mississippi Medical Center, are run by local governments or private entities. The state of Mississippi only controls one hospital, and that's through the Institutions of Higher Learning Board. So if we give money to those hospitals, that money at that point then becomes out of our control. And what happened in the mental health situation is we have 13 districts for mental health in communities, and we have to give the money, but they're controlled by the local governments, and the state of Mississippi gets sued when something goes wrong.
So the only way you find out when something goes wrong is another Shadrach attack, and we hear from the state auditor's office, is what you're saying.
Pretty much.
All right, more on this with John Polk, Senator, Mississippi District 44, and we will continue right after this. The Senate comes in at 10 o'clock this morning, John, and the House follows with the other judges. I do have to clarify this. Somebody on C-Spire text line pointed out that John may have said 100.8 instead of 108. I'm not sure. We'll clarify. It sounds more plausible that you have 79 people, not 70, but 79 people over 100 years old on PERS, and 100.8. I'm not sure, but we'll double check. All right, let me go to a couple of things here. Postpartum, is there a possibility that's going to be brought up again in both the House and Senate and clear committee?
It's definitely going to be brought up in the Senate. We passed it 3 times last year, and the House never would move to include it. I don't know what will end up being the final outcome, but I do look for the Senate to pass it again.
But you're saying, let me go back on this. You're saying there's not really a lot of appetite now to even look at expanding Medicaid itself.
I don't believe there is.
Have you ever heard a figure? Because I've heard a figure from $200 to $400 million, a little over 400 in some cases, what the additional tax would be or cost would be to the state revenues.
Well, I delved into that this summer and looking at a lot of different reports that are out there. And the problem that you have is so many reports give so many different numbers.
Yeah.
There's not a number you can rely on. One number that goes into people look at is what would it increase the gross domestic product in Mississippi? Well, I've seen numbers from 200 million to 1.6 billion. What's the answer? And so until we get some numbers that I think we can trust, that makes it difficult.
It's hard because everybody you ask that looks into this, and I remember talking to the Commissioner of Insurance, Mike Cheney, on this one, and it's a moving target. One of the reasons for that, because you never know unless you actually cap the expansion, how many people are going to be there who'll join in. In every other state that's done this, sometimes they've doubled the amount of people that they thought would qualify.
And there again, I think that you're looking at what numbers do you believe, because they were told one number and it doubled. And so that's hard to make good decisions using those numbers.
Don't want to let you out of here without talking about some of your pet projects there, or bills and things that you think we need to seriously work on this session.
Well, of course, AET, we do more stopping than we do starting. We look at a lot of bills that we have to see would they affect Mississippi in a good way or a bad way. My personal goal this year is to try to get a bill through that would allow any of our law enforcement agents who are killed in the line of duty or die in the line of duty, that their family is able to stay on the Mississippi Group Health Insurance. Right now, when the law enforcement officer dies, then his family comes off the insurance. I would like to see their families to be able to stay on the state insurance and Mississippi pay for that.
That's first responders or just law enforcement only?
Right now, the bill says law enforcement.
Mm-hmm. And that's in your committee?
Yeah, well, I introduced the bill.
You introduced it.
And I think it will go to insurance.
Anything else that we look at with the... Now, you're not chairman of appropriations. You're the vice chair, right?
I am the vice chair, and glad to be vice chair instead of chair.
I was going to say.
That's a big job.
Well, you've been chewing those numbers for a long time. You go back and you take a look, and we were talking to John Reed about this a little bit earlier. In the last time we were really in a deep hole, and you start looking at some of the numbers, and it's a lot different looking at a $4 billion surplus compared to $500 million in the red. Oh,
absolutely, and that's like a family budget. You love to have money in the bank and not be owing the credit card. One thing that I wanted to point out, talking about the increase in taxes we received this year, one number that stands out to me is the corporate tax in Mississippi. For the year to date is $166 million over estimate. And I think that's just tremendous, because that shows our corporations are making money, and Mississippi is a good place to do business.
Man, you don't want to sound like a teenager or some juvenile just saying, nah, 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 nah. But how many times do we have the Democrats out there and all these Democrat liberal journalists, so-called journalists, writing column after column that we were going to go to hell in a handbasket if we dared cut things like inventory tax or the franchise tax, and one after the other. And if that plays into the corporate picture, we are as healthy now as we've ever been.
We are, and I think that the corporate tax somewhat maybe was a little bit of effect of the PPP money, but I think primarily corporate income tax is more of a good business strategy. Good businesses in Mississippi making money, and that's what we want. That's what we want Mississippi to be, the place to bring your business from out of state and the place to grow your business in state.
We have some movements for some bills over in the House. We talked about the fentanyl strips a little earlier, but kratom and a couple of other things there to actually outlaw that, and that's causing some angst for some people. There's a small number of people who use that in this state. Your thoughts on that?
I was not really aware of kratom until I started hearing about it in the news, and then I started looking, and most of your little shops that sell tobacco and cigarettes, they all have a kratom sign in their window. So apparently they sell a lot of it. I would have to do more research to know exactly which way to go on that.
It is amazing that we allow that sometimes, because I just don't know. if that doesn't easily get in the hands of kids under, 15, 16 years old sometimes, and it is just amazing. What's your perspective as far as we get closer and closer to the medical marijuana rollout?
Well,
because there are some bills out there to make some corrective adjustments.
Right. I think at first it shows that the first rollout of the bill that was passed in the initiative would not have worked. I think that even the Marijuana Association admitted that the bill would not have worked properly. What we did in the legislature last year was gone over time and time and time again by Chairman Blackwell. And and then we passed it, and here we are less than a year later going to make some changes to it. So I think it shows that there are a lot of angles that you have to look at to keep, and here's the deal, Paul, we've got to make sure it's as close to medical marijuana instead of recreational as we can get it.
Well, then that goes back to also, because I think everybody and their brother's talking about, let's get the initiative process, and 90% of the people, maybe more, who are pushing to make sure we get this initiative process done are the ones standing by with a recreational marijuana initiative bill ready to go or push.
Absolutely.
Would you agree to that one? I mean, that's the primary reason that they want this.
That, and then there are some other people that want to increase Medicaid. Some want to guarantee that we fully fund MAEP. You know, Paul, every 4 years, and this is a year coming up, our people have the opportunity to elect senators and representatives. We have a representative form of government, and if we're not doing what you want us to do, vote us out.
Yeah.
Initiative can be very dangerous if not done in exactly the right way.
Moses asked on C-Spire text line, it's a good point, Moses, thank you. How about just eliminating the portion of the grocery tax the state receives and leave the local portion alone? I'm not sure how that divvies out.
I'm sure that could be worked, and that's not a bad idea.
Yeah. Is it 50-50 as far as contributions are concerned, or taxes are concerned?
What happens is the state, we have a 7% sales tax, and then the cities are rebated back about 20% of that 7%. So
they could keep that, and the state portion would be eliminated, is basically what his idea was.
Yes, and that might work. Yeah. I have not thought of that. That's good.
And now we thank Moses. We could call that the Moses Initiative. He could all bring us to the promised land if that happens, so let's just put it that way. Well, look, I thank you so very, very much. We look at other things out there that are happening as far as the state legislature, and there are numerous ones, and it's just a plethora of things, and you kind of hold back on some of these to see if they clear committee as we get a little bit older in the session. Much like the EV situation on car dealerships, that's another thing out there that's still making its way through, and whether EVs are going to have a dealership itself, or how do they work their way around that one? Is that in the Senate committee, or do you know? The Senate committee?
I think it may end up in Finance committee.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there will be a bill about it. Many dealers have spent years and years under the plan that we have of dealerships selling cars. We need to keep it that way.
I don't understand how they. It's like, and it's a new world out there, so I speak as a boomer. But just the idea of buying a car from a vending machine somewhere is just beyond me. I want to kick the tires. I want to know the guy's going to be there for the oil changes or any problems or warranties, and it's just beyond me that somebody would do that. But then again, it is a new world out there.
It's a new world. And
John, thanks for coming in.
I'm having trouble being in it sometimes.
Well, that prepares us for the VIP press box in the sky.
There you go.
To let us know our time has passed. We thank you, man. Appreciate it.